Okay, so I'm just going to talk a little bit about your fish now and fish welfare. This is probably the bit that most people are most nervous about when they set up one of our produce pod systems, is making sure that they know how to look after the fish and keep them safe and well, which is obviously really important. The pupils obviously love the fish, become quite attached to them, so we want to make sure that they understand how to keep them well, keep them healthy, and it's actually a really nice opportunity for them to learn how to take care of a pet in this way. So you want to have just 2 or 3 fish for your system, no more than that. And that's because the biomass of the fish should be about equal to the biomass of the plant in the system. So obviously the size of the plant will change over time from when you put in small seedlings and then they grow. But basically all of the ammonia that the fish are producing that's turned into nitrate has to be taken out by the plants. If there's not enough plant to take that out in terms of there being too many fish, then those ammonia levels, nitrate levels are going to get too high, and that's harmful for the fish. So 2 to 3 fish in the system. When you go to buy the fish, the pet store will probably carry out some welfare checks. So they of course want to make sure that the fish are going to a safe home. So you should already have your system set up. And in the way we've designed the 6-week program, you'll add the fish in the 2nd session. So your system will be ready. When you go to the pet store, they'll usually want to know that the fish are going to go in within 2 to 3 hours time. So you might want to think about when you're going to buy the fish, when you're going to plan the lesson, maybe pop out in lunchtime to buy them so that they're ready to go in the afternoon. A couple of tips while you're at the pet store. You might want to buy a few more decorations for your tank. So we do give you a little bit of plastic plant to go in the bottom. But if you want to buy anything else, then feel free, go crazy, make them a nice home. Probably buy some more food while you're at the pet store as well. We've just given you a small tube to get started, so we recommend that you stock up so you've got plenty to keep you going. We do advise that you don't buy the flake food and instead buy the pellets, which is what we've given you with your system. So the flakes tend to clog up the pipes and the pump filter, and that can cause blockages and prevent the water from flowing around. Whereas the pellets, they'll either float or sink to the bottom, but the fish will just eat it whole, so there shouldn't be any excess food in the system that way. And another thing we recommend buying at the pet store are some pyramid feeders. So the pyramid feeders, they're just a pyramid or a triangular shape, and they're great for school holidays such as half terms, where there's not going to be anyone around for a week to feed the fish. You can put one of those in and it will slowly dissolve over time. So it means that you don't need to worry too much over those short holidays. In terms of summer holidays, then you wouldn't want to just leave the fish for 6 weeks. You'll want somebody to be going in, checking on them, or it might be that you decide to take the fish home and keep them at home in a normal fish tank for a few weeks. If you want any more advice on that, please do just get in touch. We'll be happy to help. So when it comes to adding the fish to the system, this again has been designed into the activity that the students will be doing in session 2. So they've got the instructions within their worksheets, but I think a couple of things to note that are really important is, first of all, to make sure that the temperature of the water is almost the same in the bag or whatever you bring them in from the pet store and what's in the system. So basically, it's likely that the water that you bring the fish in is going to be a different temperature to room temperature. So if you just leave that bag in the same room as the system for a couple of hours, you should find that it balances out. But you can just check by measuring with a thermometer, and you want to make sure that it's no more than a degree difference either way. The reason for that is because fish are cold-blooded. If it's more than 1 degree difference, either more or less, than the water they're currently in, it will give too much of a shock to their system. So we definitely want to avoid that. And when you're ready to put the fish in, if you just float the bag in this large tank here where they're going to go, float it in there for about 15 minutes, and then just slowly open the bag up and release it so that the fish can swim out. It's less stressful for them. You'll be absolutely sure that the temperatures are equal. And it's really great, I think, to do this with the students. Let them see as much as possible of what you're doing, so don't feel afraid of having to do it yourself and then show them afterwards. The more they can see, the more they'll learn from this. And that's also, I think, a really nice opportunity for you to name the fish, so they can come up with ideas in that session and then almost have this sort of welcome home ceremony for them when you release them into the tank. So we're recommending that you start this programme when you're at the start of a sort of half term. So we wouldn't advise putting the fish in just when you're about to go on school holidays. Once the system's up and running and everything's sort of stable and you know it's working, then it's really low maintenance and you don't need to worry too much. But it is important to keep a close eye on the fish, especially in the first few weeks. So we suggest that you start the 6-week programme, certainly add the fish after a holiday, not just before you're about to have a school break. And the way we've designed the 6-week programme, you'll add the bacteria in when you build the system, well, the quick start to get the bacteria growing. And then that means that the bacteria has time to colonise the system, and by the time you add the fish in the second session, there'll then be enough bacteria to start converting some of the ammonia that the fish produce into nitrites and nitrates. So it just helps to start to balance things out a little bit. And then the programme is designed that in week 3, or session 3, your plants should then be ready to go into the system. And what this means is that once the plants are in, their roots are starting to take the nitrates out of the water, and that will balance the chemicals out, so you haven't got a build-up of ammonia or nitrate, which would be harmful to your fish. So if for any reason you have any problems with your plants, they're just not working when you propagate them, you might want to hold off the fish a little bit, just to help balance things out. If you have any issues around that though, please don't hesitate to just get in touch with us and we'll advise you what's best to do. Okay, so in terms of looking after your fish, goldfish can actually live for 20 years or more. They're pretty hardy creatures, and that's one of the reasons why we use them in the produce pod, because they actually are very durable. They're actually pretty sturdy little things. We know most people's fish don't last that long, and that's usually because they've not been taken care of properly. The main reason for that is usually overfeeding. So a fish's stomach is roughly the same size as its eye, so that gives you a rough idea of how much food they would want each day. So in terms of the small pellet bowls of food that we've provided for you, we would recommend maybe 2 of them a day per fish. If you feed them too much, it's just going to make them ill. Over weekends, you can just add a little bit extra food to the system, that's fine. I've mentioned already, if you've got a school holiday or you're away for a while, you can put a pyramid feeder in, and when you buy those, it will tell you sort of what size it is in terms of how many fish, how many days feed it will provide. In the first produce pod investigation that the students are going to do, which they'll start in session 2, they'll do some activities around fish welfare, so this will start to introduce them to how to look after the fish, things to look out for, so how to do welfare checks in terms of how their fish are looking, and also testing how hungry they are. So if you're not sure about how much to feed your fish, you can just add a little bit of food to the system, and if they're hungry, they'll come eat it. If they eat it all up, you can add a little bit more and just continue to do that until they stop coming and then they're full. So this can be quite an interesting thing to experiment with for the first week or 2, just to get an idea of how much your fish eat. And do notice as well, there'll be a difference between the winter and the summer. So fish will eat a lot less in the winter, they just don't need as much energy. So do this kind of test from time to time to see if their feeding habits and the amount that they want to eat has changed. So I think that covers all the key important stuff for your fish. If you've got any questions though, please don't hesitate to get in touch. Just keep an eye on them for the first couple of weeks when you put them in, and once you know that your system's up and running, the plants are in, everything should be balanced, and you'll be doing regular water checks, which we'll tell you about in the other video. But as long as that's all sort of normal and steady, then your fish should be absolutely fine.